Hello, this is Lauren Roush. I'm in elementary art, and this is my final project. So first I'll step you through the technique that I did. I decided to do monotype printmaking. So you can see I tore two different types of paper. These are Reeves BFK, but they're two different weights, and they're the same color. So I tore those first and got those ready. And after I got my station mixed up, so I had several brushes to choose from. These are my favorite. I have the Aqua ink that I use, monotype ink, the plexiglass, and Aqua. Um, it's like a thinner that kind of gives me gray tones that I want instead of mixing it with water. I just use that. And this is after I'm done making the plate. I forgot to take a picture of the plate when I was done. I soak the paper and get that ready. So I just use like a baking pan and slide the Reeves BFK in and let it sit there for a few minutes. And as you can see, I tore it because I wanted to keep this deckled edge. I particularly like deckled edges, especially in the Reeves BFK paper. When I was done, I patted it dry with a paper towel so it wasn't sopping wet. And you can see kind of the ink bleeding through on this paper, but this is my press, and I have masonite board as my bed, and I laid the plate down and lined it up, and then laid the paper down. Then I'll put newsprint on it. You can see me putting newsprint on it. Then I do my pusher felt, and then I lay the rest of my felts here, put the rest of the felts in, and then run it through my press. So I just crank it around until everything's ran through. And afterwards, I pull it off and reveal what I have made. And unfortunately, I was super unhappy with how this print turns out. I got this new press, and I've just been struggling trying to get the monotype prints to work out. I'm not quite sure what's causing it. You can see that the ink is like blotting up and it's getting really speckly and blotchy. I'm not super sure why, but on the plus side, you can see some really good brush strokes that came out of this here, and some really good darks coming out. But however, because I wasn't happy with it, I printed it again. And I skipped taking pictures of the process because it was the same process, but you can see this is the second one. So this turned out better. You could see the brush strokes a lot better than in the first one. There was still some pigment built up, but it wasn't as bad. But here's from previous days as an example. These are some other monotype prints that I've done. This is probably my favorite so far of my nephew and my two little cousins. So yeah, it's definitely a learning curve, but the good thing about monotypes is they kind of removes you from the process, so you're not working directly on the paper, so you don't really know how it's going to turn out, which can be frustrating in the case when it doesn't turn out, but it can be really relieving because it's not in your head. You're not super focused about how you're going to do it. Which I know is particularly good for the pre-adolescent stage of students in art. Yeah, and that concludes the PowerPoint and the slide that I did. I'd like to eventually work bigger and do some, but right now I'm just trying to learn the press. So I think that this is how I would have students first begin, as I would just give them black ink and just kind of have them use brushes, use their fingers, scrape, thin it, and get some gray tone. Maybe use toothpicks, maybe use the reductive method, make the whole plate black, and then wipe some white off. And just kind of learn the technique, and then afterwards they can go into color, or they could do figures, or they could do whatever. So I think that this could be a lesson that was spread out over several units for them in order to figure out monotype printing. So the artist that this is based off of is Giovanni Castellone, and he was the inventor of monotype printmaking, which is super cool. He was born in 1609 and died in 1664. He was born in Italy, And the title of work that's my favorite by him is The Creation of Adam, and it is done with the reductive technique. So on a copper plate, I'm assuming it was a copper plate back then, he inked it up completely black and then removed the lights that he wanted to. He influences on artwork as he's the inventor of monotype print technique. He was an Italian Baroque artist, so that was his style. He worked in paint, printmaking, and drawing. Castellani primarily created work that dealt with religious scenes, such as the creation of Adam. But he also did portraits and studies and stuff. I saw some sketches he did of like camels and stuff. And I could not find a quote from the artist, and that's probably because he was born in 1609. So did I enjoy the printmaking process? Yeah, I really enjoyed printmaking. I didn't really enjoy printmaking that much before I took a class in it. And then after I took a class in it, it was just super interesting to me. I enjoy the process and how you have to kind of trust the process in order to get work. And I like that there's a step in between you and the finished work, because you can paint on the plate, but you don't know how it's going to end up on the paper, which is particularly interesting to me. Do I enjoy working quickly with the monotype? Yeah, I really like the expressive, quick nature of monotypes. It helps me not to overthink what I'm creating. But in larger works, you can see these are, like, compared to a pen, these are really small. I've been working really small, but I have tried to go bigger, and it is really stressful because the ink doesn't stay wet forever. So you have to work quickly, especially with this technique, and that can definitely be frustrating. So when I teach this to students, I will be mindful of that, and I'll probably have them work first on smaller pieces of plexiglass. If you taught this project to children, how would you work differently? I would make sure everything was organized. I'd be sure that the materials were organized and in different stations for each step. There's nothing worse than getting ink all over the paper, the expensive Reeves BFK that you just tore, or getting it all over the felts that it won't come out. So I'd be really mindful of having one station to tear the paper at, one station to paint on the plexiglass, one station to soak your paper, one station to put your print on the board and run it through, one station to let your prints dry. That way everything's separate, and hopefully it won't get congested at those points with students. Additionally, I would use a directive method of teaching to do this, which is I do, we do, you do. So I would really want students to understand and be comfortable with the process before I let them go, because I really don't want them to get frustrated with it. I want them to have a really good time and understand that it's really important to clean up the plates really well afterwards, to clean up the brayers really well afterwards, the brushes. So I would make it a point that I modeled it really well before they took off, so that they kind of understand how to tear the paper, how to line up the plates, which clearly I'm not super good at either. And I would really want them first to experiment and have fun, like I was saying before. List 3 things I learned. It's good to be organized. Monotype printmaking is about the process and technique, and it's okay if some prints don't turn out, because you can always just make more. And although it's a fast process, it's good to be patient and not rush your work. I have a really bad time just rushing through things, and so sometimes I just need to take a breath and just kind of live in the moment and work on one plate at a time rather than just rushing through as fast as I can. Were your images clearly outlined in the print? I'm having a really hard problem of getting my press to work really well. I actually, if you look at the previous pictures, you can see here I actually refabricated it and welded it so that it was stronger. It could hold more pressure, because I thought maybe that would help my printmaking process, which it did, but now it's kind of hard to crank. But yeah, so I think my figures are well outlined. Let's use this one. They're well outlined, but I kind of wish I would have focused on the figures rather than the background, because I think that's where my problem was the background. So if you see like this one or this one, it has a lot less background, and I think that the artwork is a lot stronger because of that, because I focused more and took my time more on the figures, especially this one and this one. Yeah. Okay, so evaluation sheet. Did the drawn image work successfully in the monotype print? Yeah, I think it did. The figures turned out well. You can tell what it is. But like I said, if I were to do this again, I'd probably focus less. Right now, in this developmental stage of my printmaking technique, I wouldn't focus on the background. Did you print on more than one type of paper? Yeah, so this one was a lighter weight of Reeves BFK, and this one was a heavier weight of Reeves BFK. And that might have been the difference to how the ink reacted to the paper. Did you sign, number, and title each of your prints? Yes, I signed and titled each print. However, they are monotype prints, so I signed and wrote the title, but I'm not going to number them because they're monotype prints. Because although they're, I, I drew or I painted the same thing, I printed the same thing. I'm going to argue that each one's different because I had to recreate the plate every time. However, if I were to create like a lino cut or block wood block print and create a series, then I would number them. Were you creative in your approach to monotype printing? Yeah, I used a variety of brushes, different brush strokes, and various techniques in order to experiment and learn the technique. Did you turn the artist information and response sheet? Yes, I did, which will be attached in the email I sent you. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this class for me. I really appreciate it. It's been a really good time.